get us an exit door. Maybe you could put in some drains in the bathrooms, because there are none, and we slop in the water, and do something about the playground and the splash pool, because I'm really worried about that. Thank you again for getting us this pretty building. I'm sorry you had to spend thousands of dollars on those crappy royal restrooms that we didn't even use for 6 months. And my only urge is that whenever you take up another building or another anything, that you talk to constituency instead of going ahead and just doing things willy-nilly, because we could have, the only reason why our floors, you haven't had a lawsuit, Mr. Horowitz, from somebody slipping, is that I ran into Sue at the gym and told her we were dying over here. And then you spent thousands of dollars to get the floors fixed. This could have been alleviated had you talked to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Who else would like to speak? Hi, Mr. Thayer.
Yeah. Where they're not drains, because
In the bathrooms.
well, I've been in the bathrooms.
There's a drain in each of the, and I can only speak for the women's.
Right,
There's a drain in each of the showers,
right.
and there's another drain by the front sink. There's no drain where we come out of the showers and all the water is.
Okay, so the floor's not pitched to the drain.
No, and so we come out and it's like, and I said, get us back those plastic mats again, at least so the water goes down, we're standing on something that's, that will protect us. That's an immediate, easy solution.
Got that one?
All right, my name is Tom Thayer, 4821 North Dixie Highway in Boca Raton, Florida, 33431. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the layout here. The commissioners are actually going to address the audience instead of each other. And I think that's great for a public meeting. So the microphones, we're going to be able to hear you. It's just a wonderful situation. So congratulations on that. And very much like my presentation about 2 or 3 years ago, to model it after the Lake Worth Drainage District on the Military Trail. And you got a lot of the same things here. So congratulations on that. I appreciate it. All right, what I'm really here for is tomorrow is the first Tuesday, and a lot of people will be at the community center at 8:30 in the morning. Doors open at 8 for the Federation of Boca Raton Homeowners Association monthly meeting. Tomorrow, it may not sound so exciting, but we'll lead off with a department head. Last month we had Michael, who did a great job on Parks and Recreation. Tomorrow it's going to be Chris on utilities, and I think he's going to have some interesting things to talk about. And the nonprofit spotlight will be the Spirit of Giving Network, and they're always doing great things in the community. Seems like on a monthly basis. Our keynote speaker is going to be Mary Wozni from the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County. And I expect a presentation like I've seen or saw maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And it's a whole lot more interesting than you think. And it's more than just blue bins and yellow bins. So if it's a recyclable product and it goes through the Solid Waste Authority, it's probably going to get recycled. But we'll learn all that tomorrow morning. Come by, it's open to the public, and it's even open to commissioners. And we oftentimes see Craig, but I don't know where Craig is. So anyway, feel free to come by. It's all free, and we'll have coffee at 8 o'clock, and the program starts at 8:30. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Who else would like to speak?
I would. Hi, how you doing? I'm Justin Solomon. I'm a resident of Boca 23281 Longomar Circle. And I wanted to come to this meeting regarding the baseball situation. And I run a travel team. My son also involved in Little League. And it's been a nightmare getting fields, like a nightmare. And I found out, or I mean, I've known that you only need one resident to reserve a baseball field in Boca. And it's a big problem. One, you have a lot of teams in situations that are doing this for money. They come in from outside of the area. They recruit. They need to only have one resident. They can come in and take our fields. My team has 11 or 12 residents and we can never get fields. We can never practice. We fight with Little League back and forth. I do both. It's a tough situation, and I can't imagine other cities that don't have at least 50-60% residents. So I mean, I don't know how or what to do about it, but I wanted to at least come and make it known that it's a huge problem. So.
Mr. Stevens, would you like to respond?
I think Kevin and our athletic staff work at the travel baseball teams. Yes, we do require one resident to schedule fields, but the more residents you have on your team, the greater percentage of field space that you can get. We got to look into the situation though and see what priority they're in and kind of go from there, see what we need to help resolve.
Justin, if you get with Mr.
Well,
Stevens.
can I just respond to that? Because my team has, in our younger division, has probably the most residents at anyone, in our age group. So granted, we do get first right. We're allowed to pick 4 fields during the week for a whole month and then 2 on the weekends. But then it goes like a draft. So then it goes down the list of all the other travel teams. So by the time it comes, which 4 practices and 2 game or 2 weekend spots is not really that much. Sometimes you need more. You're playing other games. So by the time you come back around, there's usually no spots left. Especially this is a worse problem in the spring. So, and again, you're fighting. To me, it's crazy that you're fighting with teams that have literally 1 resident. I know people. That's how I found out about this because a friend of mine's on a team called a Boca Fury team, and they have 2 residents on the whole team. 2 out of 13, 14 kids. It seems to me ridiculous that we have to fight with people that aren't residents. I mean, just come to Boca and just do whatever you want. I mean, it seems like there should be a set rule of our fields. I mean, besides, I can only imagine having to wait in line and not even field. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's ruining the fields. I mean, it's wear and tear on them. And I mean, I don't want to sound selfish because it's our team, but I know this is a problem for other Boca teams as well. That's why I came here. So.
Mr. Solomon, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Could you explain to me how baseball operates? Are there just multiple independent teams that play in a league, or do you have one league that manages all of the teams that participate?
There's 2. Well, there's Little League, which is Boca Little League, which is a separate organization, and they obviously get first billing for everything, which they should. So for the travel teams, realistically, you don't need to be involved in anything. We're involved in it's called the South Florida Travel League. But so it's like it's an organization that organizes the whole thing. But at the end of the day, it's other than like you're on your own. You schedule your own practices. You schedule who you play. You take care of your own fields. Other than them just keeping everybody together and having some sort of playoff, that's it. So there is no structure. So like I said, anybody can just come, and as long as you meet the requirements of the city, which is 1 resident, insurance, other than that, you can just, you're in line to get a field.
Has there ever been an effort made to bring all these travel teams under one banner so that you have one organization that's trying to reserve fields and might solve some of this problem? In addition to perhaps taking a look at this residency issue, I agree with you that's really, we were surprised to learn that was the method in which you could get a field, which we thought needed to be examined and probably will be when we do our budget.
I mean, there is an organization that kind of keeps, but because it's all over South Florida, it wouldn't pertain to just Boca. You know what I'm saying? So you're playing West Point and East Point, and everyone's responsible for their own fields. And if you schedule a game, it's based on your own field availability. So this season, I mean, look, we sign up for this. It's a pain. My 9-year-old, we have to go pretty much. We played 1 or 2 games the whole season in Boca because there's no fields. So I'm every Sunday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, trucking up to West Palm or wherever, and which is fine. We signed up for it, but it still should have a fair shake on having, I shouldn't be having to not have a field because these teams that literally have 1 resident. So.
Yeah, it's like, for instance, Boca Hoops is the only program in town, basketball program, other than I think the city has a program. But they have both a recreational league and a travel program. They play in other communities, but as far as getting facilities, I mean, they have one organization that's acquiring the facilities. under a master schedule. So, that might be something for you to consider in the future so that you don't have to compete with other Boca travel teams for field space.
Definitely something that I would consider, so
Thank you for bringing that to our
appreciate
attention.
it, thank you.
Mr. Solomon, just one quick question. How far in advance do you set up schedules for each season?
I mean, it's really up to the city. They do a great job managing it. They have a tough job because everyone's, you're dealing with Little League and you're dealing with everyone. So it's usually we get about a month in advance. It's really,
It's not a lot of time.
Not a lot of time. So, that's.
What I was thinking, instead of doing your schedule based on availability, that you work in advance to put together a schedule based on your travel needs. How many home games will you have? What's available 2 or 3 months in advance instead of maybe a month in advance? Maybe that'll help you.
I mean, believe me, I would love that. It's not really, we can only go on the availability of the field. And I think the main issue with that or whatever it is Little League. They take, Little League is Little League, the 600 kids they're managing. So I think it's worse in the spring. It's much easier in the fall. But, they have 500-600 kids, you gotta, and they're all different ages and it's an undertaking. So we're after that, which is completely understandable, but then, there is no way to plan. We can only go, a month in advance, 5, maybe 6 weeks max. It's hard to do a whole schedule. And then, other, cities have it. They probably don't have as many fields that they're worrying about. So, got it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
no problem.
very
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Who else would like to speak? Please.
Clarence Smith, 256 Northwest 64th Street, Boca. And I'm kind of interested in the golf, and I happen to live on the 9th tee of the North Course. And I've been there for 20 plus years. I've been coming to a lot of these meetings, and I used to play golf. I don't play anymore due to some physical limitations. But I'm kind of interested in when we can get something really moving. I was somewhat surprised when I look at here the concept by Price Fazio. As I recall multiple other meetings, we were talking about the concept, and we'll have a driving range here, but no, we'll move there. So my question might be is, who could give us a kind of a straight answer? When do you think this could really get off the ground? I've heard you, Price Fazio say something like, well, maybe we're going to start in July. But I'm just hearing bits and pieces and bits and pieces. It's been going on forever. So can somebody say, this is going to happen, this is what needs to be happen? And I'm surprised that we're still talking about concepts.
The concept is
multiple
for
times.
the maintenance building, the restrooms. These are the drawings we're looking to approve tonight for the architects to go forward on that. So that it's not the overall concept for the course, it's for specific buildings to get approval for that. So we're not stepping back, we're stepping forward, and we do have a joint meeting set up with the city for approval of the design on May 28th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please include golfers in that?
Got plenty of golfers. We have our design team right here. Okay, who else would like to speak? Hearing none. Public requests are now closed. We now come to the approval of the minutes. The first approval is on page 1 of your board packet. It's for the regular board meeting of April 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne? The second is for the special board meeting held April 23rd, 2019. And I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Pose like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. We are now up to the regular business, and the first item of business is the Price Fazio update of the concept drawings for Boca National. Mr. Branthwaite, would you like to step up and discuss this?
Sure.
Commissioners, you all have these in your packet. Second.
That's great. Thank you very much. Good evening, commissions, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So as you see in your packet that I gave everybody, we start on the first page, which is the maintenance building layout. And so what you can see here from this, the maintenance building A is laid out with the back of that building towards the railway line, which is the east side of this property. To the south side of this maintenance building layout is Jeffrey Street. So I think you can see by the layout what we've created is an area where first of all, a large truck can get in and turn in that area where the soil and refuse bins are. Now those soil and refuse bins, as you may see later, those pertain to the specific types of sands and soils and other products that are used on the golf course and typically are brought in by an 18-wheeler truck. So that needs to get in, back in, tip the soil out and get back out. In addition, it also allows for a fire truck to get in and turn around in that area and get back out. So as you come in, you see the parking on the left side. And basically the building is made up of 3 buildings. So building A is the maintenance building itself, and that's broken down into 3 areas if you look on the next page. So on the right side of the page, you see the administrative offices, the work, the break room, pantry area, and restrooms for men and women. It's a very basic layout. That's all you have with regards to the administrative area. And then on the left-hand side of the page is where the mechanic is, where his area is the grinding area, where they grind the reels, part storage, small tool storage, and irrigation parts and other miscellaneous items that go in there. In the main area between those areas is where the machinery, the equipment is all stored. There are 2 large roll-up doors that provide entry and exit for the equipment, besides several other walk-in doors when required. So I think you see Office 1 manager is the superintendent, Office 2 and 3 for the assistants, and for the irrigation technician. And then you have the break room, which provides enough seating for there's probably going to be about 30 staff members here. And that break room also creates a space where the work is given out every day to the staff. There'll be a large TV up there. There'll be a schedule of work for everybody. And so that provides a very important center of where work is distributed to all the staff. And then obviously it also provides a meal, restaurant type area where they can sit and have their lunch or breakfast, whatever the case may be. And then the applicable restrooms for those people, those 30 people, are provided adjacent to that. Outside the restroom, outside the main offices, you will see a covered canopy, and that covered canopy provides open storage for some of the very large equipment, such as backhoes, the larger tractors that can be outside, and they're stored. That's where they would be stored. Any questions so far? Good.
Is there an area, like a chemical wash area for employees in case they get contaminated with something that need to wash down?
Correct, yeah. So as we move further forward into the plan, so I think this is, sorry?
Commissioner Ernst has some questions too. When you're done.
Oh, okay. So this is the washdown chemical storage fuel area. And basically the way that this is designed to work is that a machine will come in from having worked out in the field, arrive at the washdown bay. It parks there. There's 2 hose bibs located on the wall, which is the hashed wall I think you see towards the top of that particular washdown bay. So they grab a hose, they wash the equipment down. All the grass is washed into that drain area that you see in the middle of the that area. That is then transferred to the wash equipment, which is located over here. So it goes in the drain, it moves to this large wash equipment here. And what that piece of equipment does is that it separates the solids from the water and drops it into a bin. It then also is, you mix on about a weekly basis or every 2-week basis, you mix a bunch of not a bunch, but a bottle of microbes. I think it's microbes that go in there, and they continue to clean that water. And that water then is cleaned and reused in that same system. So it's a closed loop system. So once your equipment comes in there and you wash it, whatever is on that equipment or whatever it's brought back in there, none of that is then distributed into the surrounding area that people may think that goes into the groundwater or contaminate soil or anything like that. It doesn't. It's all closed, and then it reuses that same water that is used on an ongoing basis.
Where is it disposed?
Sorry,
Where's it disposed?
it isn't. It's continually used.
No, I mean the solids.
Oh, that would be used. That would probably go back to your compactor, and it could be used in the compactor in the. Thank you, compost. Thank you.
Wayne, I think Bob's question was about if an employee was contaminated.
Right. So I'll get to that. Just so somebody would come in, they would wash the machine, fuel it at the fuel bay next to it. Now that fuel bay is also designed to feed into that wash down area, so that any fuel that's spilled onto the ground, onto the concrete floor there, washes down into that area and is contained again within that area. And then adjacent to that, one more bay to the left, is where you have your mix and load bay. So your fertilizer and chemical storage is contained in that building to the left. And then to the right of that is the chemical storage. Now that's the liquid chemicals that we use on a golf course. So a sprayer would be driven into that area. The chemicals would be mixed. To the left of that, on the left-hand side of that chemical area, you'll see a chemical sink, and right adjacent to that is an employee eye wash and shower, so that if any kind of contamination or anything takes place there, that there's a very quick access, and all it takes is pulling a lever, and you're drenched in water, and anything like that will be taken care of right there and then. And it works on the same basis. It contains that chemical in the drain, and then that can be disposed of through the management tank behind it. So all of those areas, again, this entire area is is a self-contained unit. None of anything that is used in here, none of the chemicals, none of the fuels, fertilizers go beyond this area, and there's no contamination. It's all contained within, and any water used in the area is recycled and used again. So that conforms to all EPA regulations, and I think probably goes beyond EPA regulations. But this is a very standard practice that we have in the golf course industry now. A company called Waste to Water, and there's one or two others that they supply a lot of this equipment that is stainless steel. These are stainless steel buildings. A lot of this is stainless steel products, so that they don't rust, that they're not damaged by any of the chemicals used, and that there's a long life to this product.
So the water.
Aaron, hold on just a second. Craig was, Commissioner Ernst is joining us by phone. He could not be with us. Craig, would you want to weigh in?
Are you, may I speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, please. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, and I apologize for not being there in person, but I do appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I just wanted to ask Wayne, I gave you 3 recommendations, and of the 3 recommendations, the first one was to make the supervisor's office to be overlooking the shop. The second one was to combine the 2 offices into more of an open area to be just configured later, possibly with cubes. And the third thing was to eliminate closets and add a server room. From what I can tell on the picture, none of that has been done. Could you kind of explain what the thought logic was and why you didn't want to do that?
There is no thought logic. I think I met with you prior to meeting with any of the other commissions. I think just as you had a chance to review this is now the other commission's chance to review and provide input. And once everyone's provided input, the idea would then be to take it and incorporate those changes.
Well, I'll give you my perspective and why I recommend it is, after working for almost 10 years with Ryder Systems, setting up, offices and field facilities for building and working on trucks and maintenance areas, the overriding thing is to have your supervisor, your office, the person who's in charge, to have easy ability to see what's going on the shop floor. So the thought logic was your office manager should be closer to the shop floor with some kind of visibility to see what's going on. The second part was, because the other two offices, office number 2 and number 3, are small offices, and it really constrains yourself later for whatever you want to do. So rather than having that, my recommendation was to have one big open area combining offices 2 and 3, so they could possibly be configured later with cubicles or make it a little bit more open space, more in today's standards of design. And the last thing is there really is, in Florida, we saw this, it's very common for offices in the Northeast to have closets. It's very uncommon in new construction to have closets built into spaces here in Florida. But you definitely need a server room. So I'm assuming that the room that is next to the bathroom will be a server room. And quite often spaces are overlooked, but not building out the proper server room with the right amount of air conditioning and everything that's needed for it. So I encourage us to kind of consider that and design it specifically for it.
Anything else, Craig?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you, Aaron.
What's that space up, in the, building A, the space in the top right corner, did you say that was?
Sure.
Locker room?
The locker?
Yes, that would be the restrooms. Locker room.
Okay, and so that's just a closet that's next to there?
Oh, no, I think you're looking just outside of the building. There's a little square.
No, the actual space itself, where there, it looks like a locker room to me.
Yes.
I'd be fine with that. And then, so I agree with, Craig when we discussed the moving of the main office so that they can view the work area, and the combining of the two offices to make it more of an open space. The one question I had is where the storage for the water that's being recycled, is that underneath?
No, it sits in that tank.
Oh, that little, okay.
That square there, that where it says wash equipment, that's a pretty large.
Okay, so all the water is just stored there.
Correct.
Okay, and then the chemical storage, that's where the extra, the water goes down with the chemicals in it into there.
No, it doesn't. There is a containment area in that storage area, but
Okay,
then there's another rinse safe management tank within that. You see outside that chemical storage to the right, there's another tank there.
okay, so that's what gets disposed of and then,
That's correct.
so there's nothing underground?
No. They actually prefer nothing now to be underground because you can't see it if it's leaking or anything like that. So those fuel tanks are above ground now.
When I just echo what Aaron said, I think Craig's ideas were some good suggestions to include in that revisions. So that, because in the areas that I've seen golf courses, they usually have the manager's office there by the main work area with a big glass window so you can keep an eye on what's going on.
Right.
I think that's Craig's suggestions are good, especially with the server too. I think you need to have big plans to have the server area, air conditioned.
Absolutely. Okay.
Sorry.
I have to put my 2 cents in. Just a thought on the size of the break room. I don't begrudge any personnel the opportunity to take a break, but it looks like it's room for roughly 30 people.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if some of that space could be better utilized?
Well, it's a very important space there because I mean, you're right, we have set sized it for 30 people to be there at one time. Because, you know, when you start in the morning, all of your workers congregate in one area so that your one or two assistants can deliver the work requirements for the day. So you need that kind of area. And then they also need to be just to be seated during the, you know, when they're eating lunch or breakfast or whatever the case may be, which is typically all done together.
Well, it depends on, you know, are the shifts staggered or are they not? Which is, that's something to be, yet to be determined. But I'm just looking at it and judging by the other space, I thought maybe some of that space could be better utilized. I go along with Craig's suggestion about moving the office manager, the site manager to the front. I think we should be able to see what's going on the floor at all times. And also about server being able to be cooled properly. Other than that, that's my 2 cents.
Very good.
Thanks, Wayne. Continue.
When you're finished with this, you'll give us an estimated cost for these items, structured, right?
Yeah, so, you know, I think in our original bid, not bid, but estimate of 1.9 million for the building itself. But the idea now is you know, if you're in agreement with what we're doing here, is now for us to go and begin to value engineer this. Because what I don't want to happen for you is, you know, everybody here says, okay, that's great. Then we go to design, we finish, you know, all the detailed design, send it out for bid, and it comes back and it's 2.4 million. You know, so we have to value engineer it basically as we're designing, so that we design what we ultimately want. If you know what I mean. I don't want it to get out of control.
Neither do we.
Right. So if you say so the process is that you say to us, okay, we're good with the basic concept of the building with these changes. Then we begin to sit down with the architect and also a contractor who does a lot of these buildings, and then we begin to work on this. And do you want this? And much like a house, do you want that? What's that going to cost? And oh, by the way, if you do this way, it's going to cost you a lot less money than doing it that way. And if you know, so we go through that process so that we get a very good understanding of what we're going to get before we actually get to go to detailed design. So, you know, my thought would be that once we've gone through that process, I would come back, I would say to you, this is where we are. We've made these changes, we've shifted this a little bit this way. The results are the fact that we will come in under the money that the budget that we anticipated, or that there's a problem. So that's the process that we would undergo going forward from there.
So will we need another meeting if you make these changes that have been proposed tonight?
Well, I think it's just a basis of keeping you updated as we move forward with the direction that we're going.
Okay.
I just want you to know what we're doing as we're doing.
So my one issue, I don't work at a golf course, so what I would love to do is have a superintendent's opinion on this.
I've had several.
Okay, so.
But as you can see, it's a square building,
Right,
and it's not difficult. It's very simple.
no, but I'm just saying that like a superintendent would look at this and see things that we don't see.
We actually have spoken to the superintendent over
Municipal.
at Broken Center.
Okay, so they've seen these plans and,
They haven't seen the plans, but we spoke to Shannon a while ago. I've spoken to five, maybe six superintendents.
on the specific
Yep.
design and all that kind of stuff. I
Yep.
mean,
I mean, you can see this, they separate the mechanic from everywhere else because that's where all the noise is.
right, I'm just saying the little things that a superintendent would see that we won't see, you know what I mean? Or you might not see, or whatever, I just wanna make sure that we're getting, whoever is gonna be using the building is getting input into it. Just like this building should have had light card or whoever's input, and they didn't give it. So I just wanna make sure that we're getting the input from the right people who are gonna be using the building.
Right. I think
That's my concern.
the input that we're getting is, besides superintendents that I've spoken to about this and had them look at the plan and give me input. Beyond that is predominantly to one of the contractors who build these throughout Florida. And, probably have done 30, 40 of these buildings. And so we're able to get a unique perspective from their point of view as to what has worked, not only what has worked and what have you, but the best way to go about it.
Right.
So,
Okay, and I'm sure the superintendent of municipal would be willing to look at the design too and put his input as well. More input can't help, I guess. So I just wanted to make sure that we're doing that.
sure.
One other comment. I made reference to the size of the break room before. I noticed that the women's locker room is about 2/3 the size of the men's locker room. And thinking to myself, maybe it should be the same size. And that might be just a little insignificant thing, but it makes a supposition that there'll be more men working on the site than women. And I don't think that's a good supposition for us to make.
It's fine. You want it bigger, we'll make it bigger.
They're usually, I've been to a few maintenance facilities, and I've visited a couple. And they're usually on women working.
Oh, sure.
So I don't wanna waste space on women's bathroom, if there's 2 women hired and 28 men hired, you know what I
You'd
mean?
be lucky.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you have two.
Yeah.
But that's
But
That's
I
fine.
noticed there's only one toilet facility.
They're taking the next one over here too. I mean, the quality is great, but it's not
When it's not called for.
for.
No, I understand your point. I'm just looking forward to somebody who might decide, well, that's not equal treatment under the law.
I think it does relate maybe to the ratio of people that you have. In other words, if we had 50% women working there, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that you would have to have equal facilities. But until you get to that point, I don't know that it's a big issue. But I'm happy to take, if you would like to increase those to the same size, I'm happy to have that argument.
Well, it would be the pleasure of whatever the majority of the board wants.
Would it make sense to make the unisex facility larger and that way in the event?
Can do.
Let's go with Aaron's suggestion and observation about the number of, if we need to make some adjustment, we've got two facilities there for the females, and if they're predominantly male, I don't know that it's necessarily, a situation where we're discriminating against you. And if it's based upon the numbers of personnel, and you're comfortable with the layout, is that correct, Wayne?
Right, yeah.
Okay, and you have seen, had 5 different golf course superintendents take a look at it from a feasibility of, workflow, then Brian, I'm good with your suggestion.
Okay.
If you take that as well as Craig's suggestions. So,
Now let's move on.
Okay. So just moving on to the restroom facility. Okay, so the idea was to have a concept again and have a concept drawing to be able to get your input from this. I think you can see that there is a men's and a ladies. There's a roof overhang, and there's not a lot There's not a lot to this building other than provide the 2 restroom facilities, water fountains, an overhang, in case of rain or whatever the case may be. So we have also had conversations with the public restroom company, and we're trying to ascertain if what products that they have in Florida, so that we can go and have a look at them and see what they do. But they do a modular structure to where those items are shipped here to Florida, and they either assembled or, depending on the size, either assembled or just lifted with a crane and placed on a concrete slab. And those are self-contained, pre-manufactured buildings.
Where is that company, Wayne?
They're I think they're in Texas. I think. So I'm forgetting that, to be honest with you. But their typical unit is completely self-contained, drains, everything that you need, a room for storage that has hose pipes that you can wash down the restrooms with. So, they've obviously been doing it for a few years. They quoted us a fee of $133,000 for a typical unit that is very similar to what you see on the page here, except it has a storage room between the 2 men's and women's restrooms. So we're pursuing that at the same time, trying to get your input as to everything that you would like to see or that you don't feel is necessary to have as part of the restrooms.
I did look into that too, and they use sustainable products.
Well, all of this stuff will go, I see, in the actual construction.
Yes.
Right.
What's the price comparison between like a typical bill versus
Craig, go ahead.
Well, what I spoke with Wayne a little bit about it. If you go to their website, there's a company called Public Restrooms Company that was basically at the trade show for the parks. And I would say, on the surface, a restroom, you think it's pretty simple and easy and all that, but it's actually, it's got to be very much a commercial grade, easy to spray out and all that. And what they had at that show was a block-built public restroom that is built to, is basically dropped in. But what was really unique about it was all the plumbing that you need to have accessible to fix it, like the water heater, all the things that you just take for granted are very much available in the, on the back side of everything. And so it was just really, to me, it was very well thought out. They were kind of square block buildings. I think I passed it around in the binder that I gave to everyone. But my whole point on the thing was that it probably is easier to, purchase those things, even if they're $150,000. They're very, very well thought out, each of them. And then you can design your roof if they don't have the roof kind of specs to make it more aesthetically pleasing. But I was very much impressed with the pre-built type of restroom, that I thought was worthy of looking into further.
Anything else, Craig?
No, but I think leave it up to, I mean, it's up to the group and Wayne when he's got a good scan on things. I do want to, one last thing is on the main facility, just under my comments on it, overall, it is a very well thought out design of the plan, the turnaround area, and I compliment him for what he did do. I didn't want to come across too negative on it. It really is that facility looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
So the idea would be to pursue discussions and to get a further understanding of, because what the public restroom company does is they provide you with a standard, and then do you want the roof a little bit bigger? Do you want this smaller? Do you want, what kind of finish do you want on the walls? And all of those are additional costs. And, although Craig, as Craig rightly says, they've thought of everything, obviously. So they've been through this process many, many times. So there's a benefit of having the self-contained unit. But I think we just need to go further and understand what those additional costs are going to be ultimately.
So you're just going to investigate those costs in mind, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is that we need to understand is how we're going to get it out onto the site. Because if they bring it pre-constructed and you need a large crane to take it out there, that's a very sandy site, and so that may require some additional forethought to get that heavy equipment, not only the truck that has the item on it, but also the crane to lift it off and place it in place. But those are things that we can solve.
Are they made specifically for South Florida, or our
No, they ship countrywide.
in terms of Florida building code, windows,
Yeah.
the roof, all that?
Yeah.
Humidity.
No. You're on your own.
Oh, and just one little, I'm sure you're gonna do this anyway with the water fountains. You can make them kind of reusable bottles. The water fountains that you can
Yes.
full of reusable bottles.
So you don't want just a little stream
Don't
coming
just
out.
want the little stream.
Thank you for that. That's good input. In terms of overhang, I don't know if the commissioners see this having a large parking, large area to get out of the shade, or do you just see this as a basic restroom in and out, and off you go? I don't know, do you have any other thoughts on what you may like to see?
Well, where is it again? It's on the south.
There's one on the south, one in the north, yeah.
In case there's storms, people would just scurry underneath it, at least room for that.
There's a lot of people in 9 holes, so when they all you'd rather than go to the clubhouse, to be honest. It's safer at the clubhouse than a 4 foot, 6 foot cover.
Yeah. How big can you make your?
Sorry?
How big can you make it?
You can make it fairly large, but I thought if you have something there for 6 to 8 feet, it's basically all you need. People that not everybody can park their carts there, but if they pull up there and take refuge there, they can all stand under there. They can go inside the restroom, but also stand under the lean-to for a period of time.
Would the overhang be equal distance on each side?
It can be. It can be, certainly.
What do you suggest?
I think probably 3 sides. The back side is just some of the equipment, the electrical boards and that kind of thing. So I would say 3 sides, and you've got more than enough coverage.
I don't want to waste too much money on those things, because as a golfer, and the range we get here in South Florida, it doesn't come straight down. And I think most golfers, when the siren goes off, are going to head to the clubhouse. And otherwise, I would go inside the shelter rather than staying outside. Because having an overhang, unless it's pretty large, it's going to be hard to stay dry underneath one of those things, and one of these storms like we've had recently. And that's what we need to anticipate. So that's just my thought. I mean, it'd be nice to have some type of protection there from, some weather that comes in, but I wouldn't want to get too extravagant with that.
I think what I'll do then is I'll take this to the next step with the public restroom company, if you're in agreement, and see what those additional costs are, and then you can take a look at it from that.
Does the 133,000 include the shipping?
Yes. A lot of money.
What would be the cost on just a normal bill?
Well, we've estimated 173, I think, if my memory is correct. But like I say, that's a high estimate. So that's the purpose of this now, is to begin working through these and work, almost working to what we need and understanding what that's going to cost before we get into the full-blown design.
I've seen the masonry structure like this, but it's on the outside like at FAU, that was over 200,000. And the one at Henderson Fields didn't have anything but just, 2 restrooms, and it was 250,000. So you can manage a lot of money if you start going to concrete.
I mean, we are fortunate because a lot of those costs are getting your, a lot of the additional costs in that 170,000 are set aside for getting your sewer and utilities out there, electricity. So that 133 does not include getting the power and sewer out there to those buildings.
You have an estimate on that? What sewer power would cost?
Not off the top of my head. We do have it in our detailed drawing, and not drawings, detailed costs, but I don't have it off the top of my head right now.
Because if it's 170,000 for a site bill, including water and power, and 133 for prefab, not including water and power, I wonder what the real difference is.
And that's something that we'll work to find out now going forward.
Okay.
So moving on, the last building is just a pump station that contains the turbines that pump the water out of the irrigation lake and send it on throughout the golf course irrigation system. It contains a large electrical boards, and otherwise is a simple square building, concrete block, and also contains a storage area there where they have some liquid fertilizer will be housed in large plastic, not plastic, but I forget the name of it, but in large plastic tanks that are mixed in with the irrigation system. That pump station is basically a slab. You can see the square or the triangle, the rectangle within the pump station itself, and that comes in on one unit. It's placed on the slab, and then a lot of those components are dropped through the roof, so the roof has access down to those turbines, so they can be removed because they have large shafts that go into the ground.
Are there any, I don't know what the word I want. Have you thought about what would happen if there was some spillage of the liquid fertilizer in there? Is there drainage?
It is contained. It is contained in that. So again, it's it's a very simple concrete building, a roof. People will never see it. It'll be landscaped to where nobody sees it. It's not something that has to be, unless the Community Appearance Board determines that it has to be built to a certain, barrel tiled roofs or whatever the case may be. It's very much a utility building. It'll be hidden from view, and really nobody will know it's out there.
Where's that located?
It's not on the plans. It's on the master plan, but it's on the north side,
East one.
west. Sorry, on the north side, on the northwest side, where the large lakes are. It's located on there.
I don't see space for the composter. Is that on here somewhere?
No, you're right. It will be further to the north of this building. I wasn't going to add that in until we made further changes.
The optional landscape debris create there?
That's right. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Commissioner Ernst? You're up, Fred.
Yeah, I think the pump room is a simple design. It's good. That looks good. On the bathroom, just the thought on the restroom is maybe it would be a good idea to work with the city Michael Calvert's team, because whatever we design as restrooms, I think we should be thinking about that restroom as replicatable, the same room that would be in dog parks, if we're going to do anything at Ocean Strand or anywhere else, that is a common design. And so maybe a joint effort between Michael Calvert's team and Wayne to kind of, take that off Wayne's hands a little bit so it's thought out with everything that we could do somewhere else.
Anything else?
Nope, just a thought there.
Good idea. Thank you.
So that's basically it. So, before we move forward, I just wanted some input, or as in the case of Craig, gave input and you have tonight, and that's really what I've been looking for, so that we can now move forward and begin to get a better understanding of what these buildings are going to cost, and then move forward in the design of these buildings, because we met with the planning department this week, Charles Putman and myself, and so we're starting the process of creating a site plan for each of these buildings. And I'm not a specialist, but Charlie will tell you that I guess the city requires a site plan for either all of the buildings or individually. I think we're at a point where we want one building to go forward immediately, and that's the maintenance center, because that needs to open, it needs to get approved as early as we can, so that it's ready in time for when we put grass on the golf course and start maintaining the golf course. So we've started the process of creating the site plan. We'll continue to work with that this week, and then Charles Putman will submit the application to the city. And in our meeting this week, the city looked at these drawings for the maintenance center. They gave us some feedback. We asked some questions. They helped us with it. And so the idea is, towards the end of this week, is probably to submit all the documents to the city for the maintenance center, or to begin that process of work. It's a 12-month process. So we're just beginning.
Do you have to make those adjustments that Craig has suggested?
Do I have to?
Yeah, before you submit that?
Well, we don't need to have everything completely ready immediately. We can make some changes as we go forward, but ideally we'd like to finalize this. So we would incorporate Craig's changes or any other changes here tonight, and then continue to move forward.
Jacob, do we need a motion to continue?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of going forward with the maintenance center and getting the approval of that with the appropriate changes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay. The second item of regular business is the renewal of Mr. Timberlake's agreement. Leanne?
Commissioners, on page 22 in your agenda packets, Mr. Timberlake's agreement runs out in June, so I want to thank Jacob and his team for quickly turning this around to do an amendment. Merv, as you guys know, was instrumental to what we do. He was instrumental to the budget process, the audit process, and we have an upcoming banking RFP that we're going to need his input on. So looking for approval of this agreement tonight.
Madam Chairman, I'm happy to make the motion to approve the amendment to Mr. Timberlake's contract as proposed in the packet.
Second.
Discussion, commissioners? All in favor of accepting the Mr. Timberlake's new contract, please say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign.
Good speech.
Motion passes, Joanne. Thank you, Mr. Timberlake. Okay, the third item is the Gumbo Limbo Tower. Okay, Brianne will start and Michelle will chime in.
Commissioners, recently we received a letter from, an email from Lake Wika. Basically, the city's directive on the tower situation at Gumbo Limbo is to, in order to stay on budget, would be to scrap the tower and do an educational pavilion there, and that would keep us at budget. The contractor is scheduled to leave around June 7th, so time is of the essence at this point to keep the project and finish it out. After speaking with Michelle and the friends, completing the tower and adding an accessible lift of some kind, I think is what the community wants, and that's basically the pulse of what we're getting from them, the volunteers and the people that use the facility. Funicular, Michelle has done a lot of research working with her volunteer staff at Gumbo Limbo and the friends working on different concepts. So right now we're sitting on this concept of funicular, which she emailed out some images of over the course of the weekend. And recently we had a donor come forward willing to assist with funding the ADA structure. And I'll have Michelle get up and speak a little bit about that.
So as Brianne has said, we know that there's positive support in our community for keeping the tower in the hammock at Gumbo Limbo. And therefore Friends has been advocating for ADA solutions because we believe the tower should be retained if feasible from a technical, aesthetic, functional, and cost standpoint. I'm gonna advance this for a second. How do I do that? Is it all good?
You should just put in a bad.
There you go.
There you go.
That's it. Right. Thank you. This is what the tower looks like right now. So you can see the 6 posts set in 3 feet of concrete into the ground. So as I was saying, we believe the tower should be retained if feasible from a technical, aesthetic, functional, and cost standpoint. And in our April 1st letter to Brianne, we suggested that the city investigate some access options. One of these, I should mention, is a funicular, which is also called an incline. And this was also an option that the city had brought forward in Mike Wika's recent email. This is something that's been successfully installed at a similar wooden observation tower in Maryland. And as she mentioned, I sent photos to the commissioners on Friday. I'm going to pass that. Step out and just show you. This is our previous tower in Number Limbo. The new tower is being designed to essentially be the same as that. This is the tower in Maryland with a funicular added to the side of it. Funicular is also known as an incline. Oops. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this funicular. Aesthetically, it seems to blend in well with the location. It's constructed on wood support similar to the tower. And this one happens to feature a quite good looking custom etched plexiglass cab. You can see the cab at the top with a bird etched on it. You can see it. This is also an extension that was built on. So y'all know what we're talking about. Technically, I spoke with the ATM engineer who's currently working on the boardwalk and the tower project about the funicular. He said that the tower is currently designed, can easily accommodate a simple tie-in to a funicular built next to it. The space east of the tower would be ideal, and the area is already cleared as a workspace for the tower. He said this technology has been successfully installed in many outdoor saltwater marine environments all over the world for decades. Functionally, I spoke with the manufacturer of this Maryland project. He told me that the cab can accommodate over 1,000 pounds and fit a wheelchair and 1 to 2 individuals. It does not require an operator, and use can be restricted by requiring a key or key code to be entered by a staff member or volunteer when it's needed. He also said this particular design was built to withstand 4 hours of 200-mile-per-hour winds. So it's really great from our standpoint to see that there is a technical, aesthetic, and functionally appropriate option for ADA access to the tower, which brings us to the last item, and that's the financial feasibility. As Brianne mentioned, we have a wonderful private donor who has offered to contribute a significant amount of money towards this ADA solution, to honor the memory of a beloved family member from our Boca community. And so Friends is extremely grateful to the wonderful family for this generous offer. Based on this offer, as well as by conducting additional fundraising in the community, Friends Board has authorized me to say that we are willing to contribute a total of $500,000 for a funicular solution, which would allow the tower to remain in the hammock and be accessible to all. This project to provide a funicular for ADA access presents a wonderful win-win opportunity to accomplish something that benefits our entire community. Our contribution enables the city and district to pursue a cooperative solution together, and the donor would be able to honor their family member. Plus, the tower would remain accessible to all. I'm sure there's a lot of details that need to be worked out, but if all parties are willing, I believe we can make this happen. I did speak with Mike Rika this afternoon, and I've received a very positive response to this. Are there any questions I can attempt to answer? Again, I don't have a firm design, but I have spoken with many of the parties involved.
Jill, thank you for investigating this. It looks like a perfect solution to the ADA issue that we struggle with for so long. The 500,000 is. Do you have any idea what the estimated cost of the funicular would be?
Good question. Mike Week and I compared notes. The estimate I got from the Hill Hiker company that provided this was about 300,000 in equipment and 100,000 for installation. Like we had similar numbers of, I think it was 300 and 150 for installation. So we deliberately chose a number above that to allow some extra to go into district funds that could be used for ongoing maintenance or whatever future costs might be.
So the $500,000 commitment that you mentioned from the Friends, does that include the donation from
It
the
does.
individual? So
We would
as a nonprofit, he's donating to you. and-
donate to us as a nonprofit, and then we would provide that to the district as a donation.
You know, if this is something that is satisfactory to the city because it is their property, I mean, I certainly support keeping this accessible to the handicapped. This looks like a better solution than having an elevator, for instance, that was going to be so expensive. So for one, I would be supportive of this, so long as the city is comfortable with the design and the liability associated with it. I could get with it.
Jacob, is this an acceptable avenue for us to take?
Excuse me, thank you, Madam Chair. We have had the opportunity to research this a little bit, and Brianne in our office had several conversations about the option. We were aware of this potential donor opportunity, both through Brianne and through the Friends as well. This would suffice to come into compliance with the ADA. So to solve the underlying issue, that this would be a legally appropriate option to essentially resolve that. We certainly work with the city and our counterparts in the city attorney's office to the extent necessary. And if and when the time came for the Friends to make this umbrella donation to the district, contribution to the district as part of this funding, I would just ask for some board action to formally embrace that donation to the district to implement this opportunity.
So we need a motion, and I hear there's one coming.
I'm willing to motion.
I'm willing to second Craig's motion.
Discussion?
Here's my motion is that the district authorize the city to proceed with exploring the ADA compliant option, which we believe is probably the the funnel, what they call it. Whatever the option is there, but to continue pursuing that, but we want the tower to be completed, and we will, basically backstop the funding to up to $500,000, with the understanding that the Friends and the donor who is seeking naming rights on that will come through with it. I'm comfortable that they've done the right homework and research to do that. Sorry to make it so complicated.
All right.
So we wouldn't have to put any additional monies for it, except for maintenance.
We would probably need to fund this project, keep it going, and then the Friends will work on the donation aspect and reimburse the district.
Right, okay.
Yes.
And then just as a question, Leah, is this something that you would want at the facility?
I would prefer to.
Yes.
Yeah, she really wants
Yes.
We all really want
I think the whole community would love to see this.
I would say every person I talk to would love to see this happen.
I have just one question for Jacob. Given the fact that, as Craig mentioned, we probably would be pre-funding this, do we need to have some type of more formal commitment from the Friends of Gumball Limbo?
If the board were to approve the motion made by Commissioner Ernst this evening, we'd be happy to work on a document essentially memorializing the terms that are discussed tonight and coordinating with the city and the Friends as needed to essentially embrace this overall concept.
You fine with that, Michelle?
I'm very agreeable.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne.
Can I clap?
Yes. Greg's clapping.
Yay.
Okay, number 4, joint meeting with the city council. Brianne?
I think I have confirmation that the joint meeting will take place on May 28th. That's my watch. The meeting will take place May 20th, 5:30. It's going to be at the 6500 building. At our next meeting, I think we should discuss what will be discussed at that meeting and have a more clear idea from the city as far as what they want us to come with regarding the golf course.
Commissioners, any questions?
At our next meeting?
All right, discuss what we're going to speak about at the joint meeting, clarify all the different points.
So we're doing that now.
We can talk about the joint meeting. I think right now the city is talking about, they're gonna want information about financing. If we wanna talk about that now, we can.
Do we really want to talk about that again? I mean, we did an exhaustive discussion about that financial aspect of it. Unless there's something new that we want to add to that discussion. I think that I'd like to hear from the city. We haven't heard back from them since we sent that response to the letter, the second response, correct?
Correct.
So I'd like to hear back from them if there's anything else on that that we can build our discussion around for that next meeting.
Are we gonna be doing a formal presentation or no, or art or Wayne or anything, or are we just kind of discussing things with them?
At the joint meeting, I was under the impression that we would have Wayne or Art to lead the presentation. I mean, we've given the city the our drawings, our financials, which were very well done. Merv prepared those, which I probably generated a lot more questions. And so I'd like to know what questions they have. If we can get those before the next meeting so we can build an answer around that.
I spoke to Mr. Brown about what exactly they're looking for, and as it stands right now, they're not looking necessarily for a presentation on the golf course because they have a clear idea of what the design looks like, but they are going to want to talk about money and what we expect from the city.
So should we give direction to Art and Wayne? Are they gonna be doing a joint presentation? Are they doing individual presentations? We should give them some sort of direction.
Well, they just said they don't want a presentation, they want to talk about money.
Right, well, so we have to have some sort of plan on who's gonna be talking about this, right? I mean,
Mr. Kosky, would you like to weigh in on this?
Not really.
Can I weigh in?
Just
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I think there are a couple things going on. One is, I think there's a desire to have a partnership and to mutually benefit in the reward and the loss of everything. So we're kind of in this window of, well, what are we going to do? Who's going to make the first move? But we do need someone to lead the charge of the golf course. What is right now on the interlocal agreement is approval of the design. So I fully understand why the design needs to go forward with approval. Some things we are missing, but Wayne has demonstrated he's trying to fill in all the gaps on those things. So my suggestion would be is that we ask Mr. Kosky and Brianne and maybe even Jake there, what we need is some kind of just rough framework of what is the new partnership that would be on this golf course where both parties can put their names on it, but get going on the design, and who will take the lead. It's kind of like a dancing. You need someone to take the lead, but they're equal partners in the whole thing. And I think that's what we really want to kind of do. We're not just turning it all over to the city, and the city doesn't necessarily want it all on them, but we take a ownership in it, really a 50-50 partnership. But you need someone right now to, dole out pay the contractors and everyone that built this to get going. And we need to have confidence. And I think that's part of that conversation on the 28th, but I hope that maybe it could be outlined a little bit more beforehand.
Could I speak that, Madam Chairman? I think that to Craig's point, if we're going to have a collaborative effort, and as we've already had in some respects, because we've got a $19 million investment by the city in this project that we're obligated on. And my feeling is to get an understanding of what the city might to participate in, that we should have Mr. Kosky and either George Brown or Mike Wika engaged in a conversation to kind of outline some framework that we might consider in a joint partnership if that's something that we would entertain doing. I had a conversation with Mayor Singer this afternoon, and it sounded to me like the doors open for most any suggestion that would be a mutual benefit for the district and the city, and ultimately be the best option for the community. And I think with Mr. Kosky's efforts and perhaps a discussion with George Brown or someone comparable at the city, we can hopefully have Art come back to our next meeting and bring us an outline of things that we can put the measuring stick to and have some talking points in going forward with the city council at our joint meeting.
Mr. Koski?
I think it's another interlocal agreement, but maybe it's kind of encompassing just for the golf course, piggybacking on what we did last time.
Let's hear from Mr. Koski, Craig.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a brief conversation with Mr. George Brown, Assistant City Manager, regarding this very topic. I believe, and I venture to say that this Boca National Golf Course, when completed, will be a partnership between the City of Boca Raton and the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District. George Brown and I have discussed this previously. It is for the overall benefit of the community. There's no need for this to be a district golf course. There's no need for it to be a city golf course. There's a need for it to be a community golf course. So Mr. Brown and I have agreed that we would conduct some various conversations. I'd rather not call them negotiations, to outline some of the issues upon which we can come to some form of an understanding of how we would move forward to consummate this relationship. And I think we can have this pretty well in hand by the time our joint meeting occurs. And I believe I can come back to you at your next meeting and give you some of the high points and some of the issues that you need to be thinking about in order to accomplish this type of a relationship. It is not unique. We've done this before. We've done it since this district was formed. It has always been a joint opportunity for both the city and the district to work together on virtually all of the projects in which we have been involved. I see no difference here in this golf course. And I think this would be a tremendous opportunity for this board and the city council to see and to show the public exactly what elected officials can do when they work together. So I'm prepared to undertake that mission, meet with Mr. Brown, come back to you at your next meeting, and do whatever you feel is appropriate when the time comes to meet jointly with the city council.
Thank you, Mr. Koski. Commissioners, Craig, would you like to jump in now?
Well, one question I do have is to Jake. Does he have any experience writing that kind of a partnership, or should it be with Mr. Koski, or should it be both?
If I may, Madam Chair, just a brief response to the Commissioner. The answer to the first question is yes. We've been down this road a number of different times in a number of different venues, and frankly, there are a number of different ways to get to the end conclusion. The key component is going to be the conversations that Mr. Koski has with the city. So at the end of the day, in order for us to draft something and to work with the city attorney's office to come up with a document that's agreeable to both parties, we'll need to know what the obligations of each party is going to be, what each party's role will be moving forward. We have one comprehensive interlocal agreement with the city. This could be a supplement to that. It could also be a memorandum of understanding, which outlines the terms, conditions, duties, and responsibilities of both parties. There are a number of different ways to get to that final result, and I'm quite confident that we can work with the city attorney's office and come up with a document that will be appropriately suitable to both parties and keep us on the right path and in the right direction as we work towards a conclusion.
So maybe it'd be best if Mr. Koski proceeds with the business terms of it, since he's most familiar with it. Obviously keeping the chair and the executive director informed. And then as those business terms are fleshed out, that you would possibly draft or craft an agreement that we could pass back to him.
We're very
Does that work for everyone?
We're very comfortable with that approach. We're working with Mr. Koski.
Craig, I might want to flesh out some of these terms in our meeting before Jacob starts trying to draft something. because I think Art will come back with some ideas that we may or may not be comfortable with, and I'd want to get, may have to have another conversation with George after we've had our discussion to see that he's comfortable in these negotiations. I just don't know that if Art comes back, that we'll be able to come to a complete agreement, unless you're just a super salesman, Art.
We're gonna come to an agreement. We will have an agreement.
No, I'm sorry, Aaron. I know we will come to an agreement, Art. I just didn't know whether, after your first meeting, whether we'll be able to put something back on the table for Jacob to work on.
I think we will.
Okay.
Would anybody be opposed to Brianne going in a negotiation with Chelsea? I feel like two heads are better than one sometimes in these cases. I feel like being our executive director.
Art, what's your opinion? Like flying solo, or do you want to have a co-pilot?
Makes no difference to me.
Yeah, then, I would recommend that our chairman sit in with Art rather than the executive director. If that's agreeable.
It's fine with me. It's fine with me.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I think this is a good, Art knows the district more than anyone. I think we all want the same thing and we want to do it expeditiously. So if Madam Chair would go with them, that would be great.
I would be happy to. I'd be honored.
Yeah, I still think Brianne should be part of the conversation, though, if anything, to learn as well. I mean, being the executive director, I think being part of these negotiations is something that's important.
Whatever.
Okay.
Let's just get it done.
Yeah, that's
That's fine, I just think she should be part of it. And one thing, I just, I don't know why we're doing that, I'm sorry, but, I just want to be totally transparent. I heard a rumor that the city was interested in taking over the construction of the project. And I didn't know if anybody else had heard anything like that, or anything was discussed between Mr. Brown and Mr. Kosky and anything like that.
No, it's just a general discussion about a joint effort to get this project completed. There are a lot of other factors to consider, such as the city's ultimate sale of Boca Municipal. And Mr. Brown has given some facts concerning that sale that may take place. Obviously, we're concerned about the closure of Boca Municipal, the employees that may be displaced, and its effect on our finances. But I have not heard anything that says they want to build. Because irrespective, the construction of this golf course is going to be procured through a bidding process of some sort, be it a construction manager at risk or be it a low bid process. So neither one of us is going to build it. The city is not going to build it with their forces. And I have not seen Brianne lately with a shovel, nor me with.
I didn't mean building to ourselves, I just meant project management of it.
I think
I just heard a rumor, so I just wanted to get it out there to see if anybody else had heard anything.
Mayor Singer had also heard the same rumor. I spoke to him this afternoon and told him that I assured him that we wanted to continue as a partnership, and he was very comfortable with that.
I had the same conversation. And we touched lightly on the construction, and neither one of us indicated that one of the others wanted to do the construction. So I'm not sure where the rumor's coming from, but obviously he's heard it, you've heard it. But at this point, it's unfounded. It's like most rumors, it's fake news.
Thank you, Mr. Kosky.
Oh, sorry, let me just follow up. So Mr. Kosky is going to be leading the charge at the joint meeting?
Well,
is that kind of where we're going with this?
Mr. Kosky and Mr. Brown are going to, with Brianne, are going to lead the charge and come back to us on the 20th. We'll be better suited to give you, give up the whole board some direction as to where we're going on the 28th.
Okay, but we will be at the joint meeting.
Yes.
Questions for the council.
Absolutely.
This is good news, by the way. Art, thank you for engaging in that process. I think this is going to facilitate this project and hopefully get it off the ground quicker.
Okay, we come to number 5, the batting cages renovation proposal. Melissa, would you please help us with that?
Commissioners, in your packet, there was only one company that bid on the proposals for the batting cages, and that was Gulfstream Athletic Supply. Just as a quick summary, I gave in your package that was emailed to you just a quick description of the work that was proposed to be done, or that we at least had asked to be quoted in the bid documents. And that ranged everywhere from simply replacing the turf and the netting on all of the batting cages to completely renovating all 3 sets of the batting cages. The 3 sets we're referring to are the one set at Patch Reef Park, and then the dual fields and the quad fields at Sugar Sand Park. So the bid that came back in was to go with Gulfstream Sports. And I gave you I believe in your information, you have a summary sheet of the quotes that were received for that. And that's for the Sugar Sand Park duplex cages.
Excuse me, would you step outside? Thank you.
The Sugar Sand Park duplex cages are already 14 feet wide, and the recommended width is 12 to 14. So therefore, the price there is a little bit less expensive at $95,000. What that complete renovation would do would be to take down the current batting cages, because there are poles along the sides of it. It would replace it with a 4-post batting cages, so there's no poles along the side to allow for ricochet. And it would replace the netting and the pads. The quote at Sugar Sand Park and Patch Reef Parks each would be $115,000 apiece. That involves widening the concrete from the current 12 feet to 14 feet, and then also removing the batting cages that had the side poles and replacing it with 4-post system, and replacing the padding and the netting. There's also a quote, if it's your pleasure not to widen the batting cages, to simply replace the netting and the pads at Patch Reef Park and the Sugar Sand Park quad cages. And Kevin's team and Greg's team from the city have agreed that if we go that route, they will replace the pads and the netting at the Sugar Sand dual cages. So it's your pleasure as to any of those that you would like to undertake. As a reminder, the concern from the gentleman from Little League had brought this concern forward about the batting condition of the batting cages.
Am I correct in assuming that if we don't replace the netting and the turf, the cost will be less than $54,000?
Well, you don't replace the cost of netting and the turf, I don't understand your question. You're saying if you do some of the major renovations but don't replace it, or
Yeah.
you just don't do that?
If we do some of the major renovations and don't replace it.
The padding and the netting needs to be replaced. So I would recommend at an absolute minimum that you do that at the $54,000.
Okay, maybe I didn't understand you. I thought that you said the city would pick up the cost for that if we didn't expand the cage.
No, I said the city would pick up the cost for Sugar Sand Park dual cages of doing that.
Okay,
$54,000 would cover Sugar Sand Park quad and Patch Reef Park
okay,
at 54.
okay. And what percentage of the 54 would we be talking about for Sugar Sand?
If you did Sugar Sand and not Patch, well, they both need to be replaced, Sugar Sand
Yeah.
and Patch Reef, but
Yeah.
half.
If we replace Patch Reef as part of this, but we had the city replace Sugar Sand.
There's 2 sets of cages at Sugar Sand, so the city would be replacing the quad cages at Sugar Sand.
Right,
We would be replacing,
the dual.
I'm sorry, the city would do the dual,
Right.
we would
And
do
we
the
replace
quad,
it,
and we
yeah.
would do Patch Reef. So all I asked them to quote was what would be the price of doing what we would be responsible for, not the city.
Gotcha.
So that
Okay.
54,000 includes all of what our whole responsibility would be. Is that
Understood.
better? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
I guess I'm confused too. I thought these were our parks and our expense to, maybe the city might do the labor, but we'd be paying for the cost of the netting and the cushions around the balls.
They essentially are, but they already had in their budget this year to replace that pad and that netting, and that's why they said they would take care of it in the regular budget. So it is budget that would come from us.
Right, so we're paying for the cost of it. It's in our budget, is really what you were saying.
Yes, the 54,000 is all that would be above and beyond what's already been given out to the city. The city would be taking care of anything above the $54,000.
Right.
So would that be, whatever we already budgeted, would that go to 325?
We can discuss with Greg, but I'm sure if we did all the batting cages, they'd be willing to put that amount of money towards them.
And how much was that?
It's, well, it's about half of $54,000 because they'd be saying they can do one set, so
So it'd be more like
27,000.
So it'd be more like 300 to fully renovate all the batting cages.
Yes.
And Boca Little League, didn't they say they would put money towards the renovation?
Boca Little League said they would be willing to help. They did not say how much money they could contribute.
Craig wants to speak.
Melissa, a couple of questions. I mean, one, I think we should be guided by whether, one, we can financially afford it. If we do the partnership with the golf course, I'm a lot more comfortable. Yes, we can afford that in this year's budget and do it. Two, do we have the capacity to do it? So capacity being all the other things that you're working on. I don't want us to get into too many things too quickly because we have, finishing out swim and racket, we have Patch Reef. But my bigger question for you on this is, what do the teams want? Because is this going to be a one-for-one replacement for each location, so you're going to have the same number? Because I've heard from Little League parents that they would like to have additional batting cages. So my question would be, is it possible if you're going to do this, you build it so we have the old ones and the new ones still standing, or are you going to replace all the old ones?
This would be renovations. This is not a quote to completely rebuild the cages. This is a quote to renovate the cages. So therefore, this would not include any new cages. This is renovation of the current cages.
But so it's a one-for-one replacement. If
Yes.
you have two batting cages now, you're going to have two when you're done.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig. Bob?
Okay.
Well, from
Is there room to put them in a new location and possibly leave the old ones until you want to take them down?
Well, we would have to do some site location. I mean, I'm trying to think of the sugar sand duels. There's probably some space out there. Greg, I'm looking at you for some help on that, but sugar sand quads, I don't believe there's any safe space to add additional. Unless we were to get rid of the tot lot playground, but I don't believe you want to do because that's used.
Nope, don't want to do that. What about at Patch Reef?
Patch Reef Park is going to be tight too. I don't see where we could really put more in there.
Did Boca Little League say they needed more? They just wanted these renovated, didn't they?
That's all under the renovation.
He said it's all.
Yeah, I know some people who are on the Little League, and their challenge is before game time, they all want to use the batting cage. So it's always about having more than, yes, they're like renovated. This is obviously a better and much safer design than the current ones, but there's also a benefit to letting as many people as possible practice.
Yeah, well, we participated in Boca Little League last year, and I mean, you can't have a batting cage for every child out there. I mean, they're gonna have to wait their turn. And honestly, there was plenty of batting cages for everybody when we did it. So I think we should just focus on getting the renovation and getting it safe for the kids at this point. And then in the future, if they feel like they need more batting cages, we can look into that.
Yeah, I think the other issue that was brought to our attention was the width of the cages, because these are either of these 14.
The duplex cages, Mr. Rollins, are 14, and the quad cages in the Patch Reef Park are 12. And that's where you see the difference in price there, because at the duplex cages, we do not have to broaden the concrete and add additional concrete. But for the quad cages and the patch reef, we would have to widen the concrete.
So ideally, it would be that if we had the funds, the 3 1/4 would be the preferable way to go, because that would get the batting cages all the same width, and also solve the safety issue that we have with the balls bouncing off the poles.
Yes. If I may, we had set aside a certain amount of money, I can't remember the exact amount for this project. I do believe this is something we could phase them in. I think that you already have the quad cages at 14 foot, so I think you could do those at a later date. And the most heavily used cages are the sugar sand quad, and I've gone over that with Kevin Beckman on Greg's staff. And his recommendation that is if we want to do a process of slowly doing these, then we could do these sugar sand quad cages first, because they're the most heavily used, and then with the most amount of fields by them, then move over to Patch Reef Park. Again, that's 3 fields, but more heavily used, and also only 12 feet wide instead of 14. And then we could do the sugar sand dual last, because it is already 14 and only has 2 fields that it's serving.
Is there a safety issue if you don't replace the netting on the, say if we did the sugar sand park quad, would you be able to adequately hit in those others with the netting the way they are, so without there being an issue?
I think, and Greg might be able to speak to this, and Greg, I'm sorry I put you on the spot like this, but I know the netting is changed out, and I think it was due to be changed out, and I think Kevin was just pausing to see if it was gonna be a part of our project or not before he did it. So that leads me to believe they've probably been zip tied together, the mesh of the netting has probably been zip tied together enough that we probably need to move forward and make changes there. Greg, is that an inaccurate statement?
The other question is, when would this work be done? What's the season for Little League? And we don't want to take them down during the start or the middle of their season. When would this work be done?
July. We bid it out with the idea of doing the work in July, and I had worked with Kevin and Greg on when the best time would be to do that.
We start fall ball in September, right? Right, so we want to get it done.
What's the timeframe for the, if we did the whole renovation?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know that off the top of my head. But we would definitely have it done in time for season.
So Melissa, your proposal was to do the Sugar Sand Park quad cages first. Is that the one
Yes,
that's
sir.
more heavily used?
Yes, sir.
And then phase in the others, and there's probably no economies of scale or mobilization charges would be any different if you were to stagger this.
I don't believe mobilization, we would have to refer to our council about whether we would have to rebid these each year, to put it through a bid process again. I would defer to Jacob on that.
If I may, I wonder a little more about whether this is an isolated purchase. Are we buying something to be installed one time, or if we have an ongoing maintenance agreement or ongoing relationship with this particular vendor?
We do not.
This would be a one-time purchase. And if this was a one-time purchase, then we would likely have to go back out to bid next time we're to replace the same equipment.
Okay.
Which again, that would not be an issue. We've already got the bid all written up, ready to go. We could just redo it and then take off whichever part you decided to move forward with this year, if you so choose to move forward.
Since we have set aside some money for the, for this in our budget, can it be shifted over to the quad cages and reduce that 115,000?
But there's money set aside in the budget for it, so what do you need moving?
You said it was that the duplex cages were going to be done by the city.
The duplex cages, only the pads and the netting is being done by the city, not the 95,000. They're just saying that if we do not go in and do the 95,000 for the duplex cages this year, at minimum, the city will go in and replace the pad, replace the netting, to make sure they continue to be safe.
Okay, understand.
So one question, so can we contact Mobility to see how much money they are willing to put towards this? Because he did say he was willing to put money towards it,
I'm happy
so
to do so.
at least then, so we know what our final number is, and then we can put whatever we set aside towards it, and then we know what extra we have to pay to get them all done.
Good suggestion.
Very, very good suggestion. Melissa, do you think you can have that by May 20th? So we could put, go forward with this?
Yes, ma'am.
So commissioners, we will revisit this on May 20th after Melissa gets some numbers from Lily. Is everybody okay with that? Number 6, the shade structures at the various parks. Melissa, page 34 of your packet.
Okay, hold on, because if you thought that was confusing. So we did a bid to provide shade structure. I believe it was a total of 7 different areas. In the information that was emailed to you, I sent you pictures so you could see the areas that were being considered. And in addition to that, I sent you some summary sheets of a grading system that I came out and creative of giving points in each category that we said in the RFP was going to be judged. And I gave it a 1 through 4. And then I attached sheets to it giving you the explanation of why I made the recommendation that I made. I think there are some critical areas that we definitely need to do something about shading in. And what I have recommended this evening is 4 areas for us to move forward with. We did set aside $100,000 for this project. And the amount that I am less than that budget by a little bit with my recommendation, but I think there's some areas that are critical to us. We've had ongoing complaints and concerns from people from the community through Sugar Sand Park about the youth slide area close to where the train is and the playground that gets excessively high in heat. And so it would be nice to have those covered. And that is the Sugar Sand Park Area 1, which I'm recommending industrial shade ports for. There's also the area over the swings at Sugar Sand Park Science Playground. Those are there are some accessible swings there and also approximately 4 regular swings. And that would cover all of those areas, protecting them from the sunlight to help prevent the surfaces from becoming extremely hot. And then in addition, I have recommended that much as you go out to the Spanish River Athletic facilities, we have shade provided for the parents and spectators at the softball and the baseball fields. There's no such shade at soccer, so I'm recommending that we go forward and provide some shade at the soccer fields over at Hornley Park.
Where would that be over at Spanish River?
Right, in spectator seating area in between the soccer fields.
Bleachers?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners?
So it would just be like one big rectangular shade on the walkway, or be one on one side and one on the other?
One on one side, one on the other.
So there'd be.
So there would be a total of, in the 3 different, you got 3 different areas, 6 different areas basically where spectators seat. 3, but they're back to back.
Right, so there'd be 6 big.
6 total shades, correct.
Yeah, commissioners, I would like to make a motion that we accept Melissa's recommendation on the shade covers and move forward with the total areas that she has priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 for a total of $115,167. If looking at our budget, the last one that we had prepared, we do have capital reserves. We do have operating reserves. I think we could afford this given the potential breakthrough that we're looking at on getting the golf course constructed. And I feel comfortable in making the motion to approve the $115,167,000 to have the shades at these 4 locations.
Second.
Discussion, commissioners? I do want to thank, Brad, did you have something?
No, just, I didn't quite hear the total motion. I'm fully supportive of shade structures and following Melissa's recommendation. So are we saying you're gonna do all 7 or you're gonna do just 4 of them?
4.
Okay, and the other 3, why are we not doing those ones?
Craig, honestly, well, I'm happy to do that if that's what the board would like. What I was trying to do was stay as close to the budget that I recommended the board as possible, since we did do some trade-offs to free up this money. So happy to consider the other areas. If I touch on them briefly, the Sugar Sand Park Area 4, which was the top lot, it is the very next priority I would recommend getting covered. However, I would also recommend in the next 2 to 3 years that we redo that playground. And I thought that could be addressed when we redid the playground, as we could address the shade at the same time. The Oodle Swing in Sugar Sand Park Area 2, again, I was trying to stay close to our budget, and my thoughts on that when I went out there at different times of day. That swing does have shade provided to us by tree coverage early in the morning, and then later in the afternoon, the sun goes down behind the second story of the playground structure itself. So that area does have some shade at different parts of the day to keep the heat from getting quite as high. And on the Spanish River Athletic Facilities, if you had an opportunity to look at the bids were all over the place, and I think, quite honestly, I need to do a better job of narrowing that scope a little bit, and to really get us good comparative bids on that. And there is already some shade at that facility as well. I know it's minimal.
I guess my thought, I hear you. So definitely number 7 would be out, but I think I'd like to consider 5 and 6 being in. If you want to do it, because last summer was one of the hottest summers we've ever had. So I just, that's where kids are, and I know it's hot. So they would, I think that everyone would appreciate it being shaded.
But if we're going to redo the top lot at some point in the near future, what's your thought about that, Craig?
I said you're still going to need shade on it, and if you can, is it going to affect the shade part of it or not? That's the question.
We can, and Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we can work around the shade if it's there. My thought was, as I was just trying to stay close to the budget that I kind of promised you guys I'd stay close to. That was one reason I thought we could put it on. I am more than happy to provide all the shade that you guys would be happy to. I just wanted to be conscious of the budget.
So we'll try to make it up in interest earnings if everyone else is okay with it.
Just one. Who wants to make it up in interest earnings?
Without number 7, it would be 149,497.
Number 7 gets a ton of use. Like, there are kids out there all the time, and it is super, super, super hot.
She just wants to go out and get more stuff.
Yeah, so I think that that's an important space to do. So I think if she got.
The other thing we could do is the recommendation I put down here, if you guys did want to go that route for that one, would cover the youngest area of that has 0 shade right now. So if you are out at the Spanish River Athletic Facility, some of the older area where the kids play does have some shade provided. It's minimal, but it does have some shade. The area where the youngest kids are has 0 shade. So if you would like to move forward with something, the company that I recommended there addressed only that area. And that's why I put them down as a recommendation.
I still recommend doing it all. I mean, skin cancer is skin cancer, so shade is good for everybody. And the kids, younger kids don't just stay in the younger area, and the older kids don't just stay in the older area. They move all around.
So the quotes to cover both of it was 101,000 and then 102,000. So that's why I kind of like to come up with a little zero in it. And I'm happy to take those marching orders, Aaron, can that rebid for you.
Even,
That's something we want to do.
even if you narrow the scope down, you said?
On that, I feel comfortable with the way they bid it for doing the full areas at 101 and 102. I was just going to try to narrow it down so that we could get that price down some.
I got lost in another conversation.
Well, so there's 2 areas.
I had a motion here to go 115, 167. I'm happy to amend it to the total 178 if it's permissible. Number 7 is the one that was in question. Now, some of these other areas do have shade on it. Listen, now, if you're talking about replacing the playground area, is this going to impact us? Are we going to be having to remove the shade, or is there going to be an issue with that?
Greg, I don't, to be honest with you, I have not worked with playgrounds in the past, but given the height, I cannot imagine you construct those and you have the height as long as it's higher than what your standard playground is, which we have over, I would say, if we design this like they much are over Red Reef Park, then those are high enough. There should not be a problem to replace the equipment in there.
You have to look at the design and what the wind load is, and then depending on what type of storm you may have coming, there is a possibility. If we have a bid for removal, we'd have to look at it.
But I think what Bob's asking is there any issue with us putting up the shade shelter, then coming back later and changing the playground equipment out underneath it without having to remove the shade structure?
Well, okay, well, the question is, you have an issue with number 7. You said you weren't happy with that bid, is that correct?
I felt like I could narrow the scope some and do it a little bit more, but it sounds to me like from Erin's experience there, and I'll be the first to admit I don't have kids, but from Erin's experience there, that she thinks that the entire playground needed. So I thought I could narrow the scope and get it down to where the youth were only.
Okay.
So I serve it your the pleasure of the other 2 companies that did bid that area, if you would like to know. That area came in with bids of,
Were they hired, Melissa?
oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't need to know that. I'm gonna go, if it's acceptable to the board, I'll just amend my motion to approve the shade coverings in the amount of $178,668.
Second as amended.
Discussion, commissioners. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I'm just confused about which shade structures are.
Aye.
Okay, so, yeah, you want me to, that would include, all areas that we've talked about, but when it comes to area number 7, which is the area you and I have been talking about, it would do the youth area of that only, and then what I can do is look at the other area in the future.
No, I mean, you give us examples of the different shade structures that are actually gonna be there.
Yes, yeah, those in your packet, yes.
Yeah. So, I just wanna make, I mean,
Most of the pictures with the red is the ones that I recommended, industrial shade boards.
okay, so the ones that are starred.
They're the ones that are in the red, with the red covers on them, hold on, I'm sorry.
Oh, the big triangular one?
The ones that say industrial shade boards, it's different for each area. So you have a sample of what each area would look like. For instance, this is the area 4, this would be where the top lot is at Sugar Sand Park.
Right.
And that's how they all bid on that same design.
Yep.
I
just don't want that happens at other parks where we pay for this gigantic shade structure or gigantic
in the shades
money,
here
and the shade is like this big.
I think you had in there some different times, some shade diagrams for you.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I liked about Industrial Shade Point is they gave us a look of what the shade would look like at 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock, two of your hottest times of the day.
It's going to be difficult at Spanish River with sun travels having shade be exactly on the concrete area walkways.
Well, at least they're big and rectangular, though it shows here.
Exactly. So I mean, there's not you're not gonna be able to put up a perfect shade to cover there to cover. You just have to move your lawn chair.
No, but I mean, some of the ones that we have around are like completely useless. So I just want to make sure that
There was
we
one group
paid for one.
that proposed movable shades too in that area, but I'll be honest with you, as a facilities person, I can't recommend that. I tried that at FAU when I worked there, and one of two things is gonna happen. You're either gonna put it on wheels, and you're gonna have to put sandbags, and you're gonna trust that people won't move them, because the wind will come along and whip those things, and somebody could get hurt. Or you're gonna have to bolt them down, and if you bolt them down, anytime you go to relocate them, you're gonna have to put more holes in the ground. So that was given to us as a possible solution, because I had stressed to them that one of the key components that we wanted to make sure happened is that the area that we needed covered with shade was actually the area that would receive the shade. And so that is what one of the companies had recommended, but I can't recommend going with a movable structure like that myself.
What is the warranty on this?
With industrial, it was 10 years.
For what?
It's the canvas and the connections and the piping.
And what is the, what kind of wind can it resist?
It's up to 150 miles an hour, I believe that is what it was.
And would our staff, would the city staff be able to take them down in the event that there's a hurricane approaching?
These were all part of the requirement was for a quick release mechanism on the shade so they could be easily removed. And Industrial Shade Points has a quick release mechanism.
Do you guys do it yourself though, or do you have a third party that puts those things back up and down?
if the city has a bid in place for a contractor that can come in, put them up, take them down.
Right.
We can also do many of them in-house. if need be.
Right, I just know there was an issue with having, like, it took a while to get the shades back up. So if it's 150-mile-per-hour wind, we really won't have to take it down, right? Because if we don't have those winds, then they would be responsible for it not holding up, right?
You'd be hard pressed to get them in hurricane winds if it's within than that.
Right, but if we're having a 90-mile-per-hour, you wouldn't take those down, right? You'd leave those up.
Call the question, please.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne? Thank you, Melissa. You did your homework. Since Commissioner Ernst is here by phone,
Yep,
would you like to do the approval of the invoices?
yes, I would like to make a motion for the approval of $294,272.29. That's invoices and payroll.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Thank you, Craig. Okay, reports and destructions. Brianne.
Commissioners, in your folders is a Hatchery Park artificial turf. It's an expenditure tracking where Melissa's keeping track of change orders as we moved along. There's 2 change orders that I had to go ahead and approve in order to not hold the project up. One we spoke of a couple weeks ago. The first one is just a credit for some extra turf color that we didn't need. That's a credit of $18,000. And then we have a second change order and this was for, we had a discussion about moving the pipe. There was a big concrete block there. And in order to do our plan to not move that concrete block and try to save money, it was going to delay the project by a minimum of 2 weeks. So I went ahead and told them to take the concrete out at $10,112. So I guess, Jacob, I'll defer to you if we need a motion to approve those. I mean, I've signed off on them and given the go ahead. I'm just asking for the board.
It would be a motion to ratify your prior action, yes.
I'd like to make the motion to ratify the change order that Brianne had made to move the concrete block that was impending over the sewer line. Is that the extent of the?
Yes, yeah, so it'll go exactly where it was drawn on the plans.
Here a second.
Craig seconded.
Craig seconded.
Yeah.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Also in your packets is a CIP request from the city, and this is to redo the walkways at Red Reef Park. This will include root barriers to prevent future cracks. We did budget for this at the start of the year for $185,000. They finished the restrooms at Red Reef, and this will, supplement the new restrooms, having sidewalks that aren't trip hazards anymore. So I'm looking for approval tonight for the $185,000 that we have in that capital reserve.
We have a motion, please.
Motion to approve for $185,000.
Craig, was that your second?
That's my second.
Thank you. Discussion, commissioners? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
This is great. I'll keep asking for more things. I sent out an email last week. We discussing with Paul Davidson, the recreation superintendent. As far as the grand opening, we had talked about having that in June for the Swim Racket Center. We'd like to move that to July 20th. And I know I heard from Commissioner Ernst and Commissioner Vogel saying that works for you guys. July 20th would enable us to get the punch list knocked out. Some of you may have seen the Painter Street and wondered what that is, decorating this facility. It's just to get those items knocked out. Give us a chance to get the punch list done and finish all the facility, the maintenance building as well. And also July is Parks and Recreation Month. So what better month to celebrate a new Parks and Recreation facility than that month? So there you go. Open house will be here as well. So I just want to make sure everybody's schedules were good for July 20th for a grand opening here. Okay, great.
Steve, you okay with this?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's everything I have.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Paskey? Thank you. Melissa, do you have anything else? Oh, she do.
What I'm passing to you now, just I've got them up here, but I just passed it to you so you can look at it as I speak. Those are pictures of the Red Reef Central restroom completed. Well, substantially complete. I think they're only waiting on doors, but what they did was paint and repair the doors that were there right now, and that was actually able to be open for Easter Sunday service, which was a wonderful thing. So in that, you'll see a little comparison before after pictures that I put together for you so you can see the progress there. The Red Reef it's the north restroom should be substantially complete by July 5th. When Greg and I talked today, he does know, and the city, what the city's trying to put pressure on them to do is try to get it done before the July 4th weekend. They had some things that backed them up with some water line issues, and that backed them up a little bit, but they're going to do everything they can to finish it by July 4th. And I think that that's close enough that I would feel pretty strongly and pretty good about that, just like they were able to finish up these before the big Easter Sunday holiday. So that's what we're looking on the timeline for the restrooms. Going back to the Patch Reef Park tennis courts, great news going on there. The 4 practice courts and 8 other courts are completely done out of the total of 16, 17, 18, 17, 19 courts. 12 of them are already done. On courts 5 and 6, they're finishing up the fine details today when I went over there, and 7 and 8 would be in line, so they'll be done probably by the end of the day tomorrow, and they're going to move on to the main court this week and try to get it done because there's a tournament going on this week and where they need all the other courts. And then when they come back next week, rain being kind, they will just have 4 courts left to finish up, and they've been able to do those in a week. So we're hopefully looking at maybe by the end of this week we could be done, and that's substantially faster than what we had projected that project to be done. We thought it would be done by early June, and it looks like now it's going to be mid-May that it will be done. And this company has been fantastic to work with. They've been very responsive, and they say they're going to be there, they're there. If something comes up and they can't, they've called. And when we do the walkthrough and point out any concerns, they fix them in a heartbeat. So this has been a fantastic company to work with. The courts are going well. The feedback has been good. People are talking about that there's a better grip for the ball when it hits, and some of them feel like they're pushing, but they even have a little bit more cushion in them. So the response has been very well to that project. The chiller coil replacement went well, and it's completed and done with. Gumbo Limbo boardwalk is progressing with substantial completion scheduled for June 7th. They're working on the new deck and the handrails as we go along. And then we are on the Patch Reef Playground resurfacing is scheduled for May 13th through May 24th, which will have that project completed prior to Memorial Day weekend, so the playground can open back up for Memorial Day weekend. The last object I wanted to touch base with you on is the artificial turf. The artificial turf, we do have another item coming that's going to come before you, is the goal posts. There were a total of 3 sets of goal posts, obviously, and they're soccer, football combined goal posts. And the bids, the specs for the bids have them come in with just a mill finish. A mill finish will not give them the proper color that they're going to need for the finish. So the request is of approval for powder coating, which will make the bottom of the goals be white for soccer and the top be yellow for football. And that's at the expense of an additional $3,531 total. So I would like to ask the board if they would be willing to use our contingency fund in order to fund that and get these powder coated, painted before they get on site.
Chairman, I'd make the motion that we extend the amount necessary to powder coat the goals in keeping with the playing requirements for soccer and football.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear it.
Craig, there's a motion right now on the artificial turf project. The goalposts are not coated.
They're basically not painted. They're going to come in the color of the metal that they're made
It
of.
would just be metal, so she's looking for approval to get those painted and take that out of the contingency money. It's around $3,500.
Oh,
$3,500.
okay.
$3,500. And Bob made
All right. Okay, Bob made the motion, Steve seconded it.
Yes.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Opposed, like sign? Motion passes. Joanne.
Work does continue on the Patrick Park in good time. Right now, tentatively scheduled, we have had a little bit of a delay where the southeast field should be finished July 23rd. The southwest field should be finished August 20th, and the northeast field should be finished September 10th. That really does not put us in big trouble just yet. We gotta watch that southwest field because it's the end of August and beginning of September when we start the football season. So we're tracking on that. I'm a little concerned with the rainy season coming upon us now. But the delay that happened was there was not going to be a delay with and I hate to tell you that there was a plan to bypass the water main that has to be relocated, and that would allow them to tear out the water main now while the bypass still provide water to the buildings. So we were working on time because that was the plan. It was approved by our architect engineers. When we had our pre-construction meeting with the city, they sent their team out to look at it, and they were concerned that that bypass would not provide the proper amount of water that was needed and the plan to do the bypass. So therefore now the CSR has to go in there and completely build the new water main and switch it over before they can tear out the old water main. But the old water main goes across part of the southwest field, and that is why the southwest field is backed up till August 20th instead of the 16th. That's my update. Any questions?
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I have just two quick items, if I might. At the last board meeting, the board directed our office to pursue an appraisal for the Ocean Strand property. And in accordance with the direction, we engaged Bob Miller of the Urban Group. We've ordered an appraisal. It's going to take about 30 days, roughly a month, to come back. As soon as we get a definitive copy of the appraisal, we'll obviously provide it to the board for review and consideration. It was a $3,000 investment, just for the record. But we did, in accordance with the direction of the board, to go ahead and move forward in that regard. The only other item I wanted to bring to your attention is, excuse me, just before the meeting, Brianne distributed a proposed final judgment, which I regret that I wasn't able to provide to you before this afternoon. We received it from counsel just before the meeting. This is from Mr. Peczkowski's counsel in the Coyote Coastal matter. We've been working with the defendant's counsel to essentially negotiate a stipulated agreement that would result in a final judgment being entered in favor of the district, requiring Mr. Peczkowski to vacate and remove all equipment from the property by August 1st, which he's committed to at his sole cost and expense, and provides for necessary indemnification for the district and the appropriate protections from liability as he goes through that removal process. In the event that anything remains on the district as of that date, as of August 1st, it'll be deemed abandoned, and the district can do with it as it so chooses in the context of removal, sale, auction, as the case may be. If there's no objection from the board, our objective is to coordinate with counsel and hopefully have this submitted in the next few days, which again will result in a final judgment in our favor, put the ball in the court of the defendant to go through the process of removing everything and vacating the premises by the set date. Those are the two items I have, and then again, so long as there's no objection from the board, we're going to proceed in that regard.
Do you need any kind of a motion from us?
If you'd be so kind, I would take a motion to that effect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Commissioners?
Motion to accept the final judgment? Is that what we're looking for?
That would work great. Thank you.
Thank you. Second by Ms. Wright. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Board. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Jacob. Commissioners, Aaron, would you like to start?
Yeah, I just wanted we paid the final time. We paid the final non-slip floor treatment here. And the results of that?
I feel like it's. Oh, I feel like it's, yeah, there's been a great improvement.
Okay, even when wet, it's fine.
Even when wet, it's as fine as you can be. What we have asked, and Paul and David are doing this for us, is I have asked that we put a sign out front. We have people that are coming in, they don't even bother counting off. And are just drinking water in the middle of the hallway. Well, there's nothing we can do in these floors that will protect that. That's gonna be a slip factor. So we have put a sign out there, encouraging people to towel off and wear shoes in the building. And hopefully that will help as well. But
yes, the surface itself, there's a lot more friction.
Slipping and falling is a skill set of mine, and I've purposely gone down to see if I can slide in the water, and I think it's very much improved.
Steve,
I'm good.
want to see? Okay. Future agenda items are batting pages and the discussion of the May 28th meeting with the city. So are there any more?
I spoke with Jacob about doing a presentation at a future meeting on Sunshine, and I wanted the board to consider putting that on as a future agenda item.
Jacob, are you good with that?
Good, so long as the board would like a presentation, Sam and I are more than happy to provide them.
When would you like to do that?
After convenience, you let us know, or we start the question.
First meeting in June? Sure. First meeting in June, you good with? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Would you like just public record, sunshine law?
Yes, Sunshine, yeah.
Sam and I discussed it.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Craig.
We've got to work on the sound system.